ever been walking through the Navy Exchange and wonder why all the Naval Pride and Heritage gear is horrifically ugly and you wouldn't actually wear it? Have you ever wanted some really cool gear and you just don't know where to go? Well, I got you, fam. Go to dgutspodcast.com immediately. Get yourself some Naval Pride and Heritage gear you'll actually wear in public. We're working on new designs all the time, open to ideas. We're trying to create a brand that lets you display that pride, but doesn't make you cringe. Also, if you're willing to and you're able to, please go to patreon.com/dgutspodcast, pick one of the 5 tiers and become a patron today. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Don't Give Up the Ship podcast. This is episode 136. Don't quote me on that. And it's the beginning of the transition series. Finally, I was able to get my boy Dan, the NSW tech type that's been on a bunch of episodes. If you go back in time, he was on the credibility of a chief one for teaching the creed. A few others like I forgot to go back and look, but the great dude. I'm a big fan of his. Every time I need the perspective of somebody that's been around, done it, and does it right, and then also is like he's willing to question and push. Very intelligent. I think you guys really like this one. And it's the beginning of the series, so I wanted to talk to somebody about the experience of like I'm post-retirement by almost 2 years, and then he's in the midst of going through the process and just kind of talk about more like the effect it has on the person, like what you're going through, the mental turmoil, the actual like turmoil of just the transition practically, like the nuts and bolts of like, hey, I got to move maybe, or I got to get a job, or I got to do all these other things. And then the kind of like what can become a bit of like almost like an existential crisis, and it can be related to your identity is tied up in this thing that you do for a living, or it can be just the removal of a lot of things like sense of belonging and community and all that kind of stuff that you don't really see it coming, and they don't talk about it very much on your way out the door. But yeah, we got in a lot of really great stuff. I could talk to Dan for 10 hours straight. So like, it was super fun. This was only a few hours. But yeah, man, it was a really great start. I'm looking forward to, I got a guy that's a veteran service officer, which is the point of contact for submitting your VA claim when you're on your way to the military. And then I'm reaching out to like Fleet and Family Support Center, and I'll get like a career counselor, like NC type on here. And I'm always open to, if anybody out there has the expertise and wants to contribute, reach out. I don't have them all hammered down yet. This is going to be like my alarm's going off. That was bizarre. It's going to be a long trickle as I kind of put together all the people and everything, and then I'll wrap them all up in a playlist so that people can share them and they can be a resource. So I'm pretty pumped about it. This may turn into something bigger as far as like a resource on the webpage that kind of directs you to all these other things. I don't know yet, but it definitely feels necessary, and it's something I'm kind of playing with in my head. But I mean, I should probably just focus on getting podcasts out weekly because my life lately has been a dumpster fire. But yeah, so I really, really hope you enjoy this. I had a great time. Check it out. Hey, quick warning. We get into some pretty serious mental health discussions, to include mentions of suicidal ideations. So just be aware. This is your trigger warning. We get into some pretty heavy stuff. So if you don't want to listen, tune out now. I did, but I can edit later. But yeah, how you been, dude?
I'm all right, man. I'm going through all of the retirement prep stuff, which it turns out it's a lot harder to get out the Navy than it was to get in it, or to re-enlist any of the times, or any of the other stuff.
To do it the right way, yeah, for sure, man. It's a lot more involved. Well, like, I don't even know if it is so much as that, like, we just didn't know at the time. You know what I mean? Like, it was certainly, they help you get in a lot more. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like all the heavy lifting's done by the organization when you join, and then on the way out, they're like, yeah, this is all you, dude.
So having been a recruiter and having done the scout thing and having been a CCC, I'll tell you outright, it is easier to get in the Navy than it is to get out.
Yeah.
Just
all right, fair enough.
And some of it is that the sailors managing their own thing. Yeah. But some of it's also just the never-ending pile of stuff, and then some of it's a lot more complicated than we give credit for, like the VA claims, which I know you went through and in the middle of right now.
Yeah.
And just kind of figuring out what you want to do when you grow up. And actually that's kind of the big thing that I wanted to get into today.
Yeah, dude, I'm still trying to figure it out. Like I feel like I'm probably about 18 months post retirement. I think it's actually close to 2 years, man. I'm like, it'll be 2 years in September. And yeah, dude, it's like the first year, it was like, I was talking to my dad about this. He's a Vietnam vet. He was in the Navy. And he's retired. He retired from, he worked with a public school system for like forever. I forget how long even, but like, he retired from there. And like, he's been retired like 10 years. And he was telling me like it took, because he was on call, like he would get called in. He was a heating cooling guy. So like boilers and pipes exploding in winter and all that shit. He had a pager on him his whole life and just this fistful of keys. And like, so he would get called into work in the middle of the night and have to go deal with all the problems. And so like, there's a lot of parallels kind of with like what I did in the Navy, what you did, you get called in and your people are all depending on you and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, he's like, dude, it took like at least 6 months for me to like stop, especially in winter, because that's when he would get called in a ton, like stop thinking he's going to get called in. He'd like be waking up in the middle of the night and just have anxiety about it. And so I feel like I spent the majority of my first year processing the fact that I was no longer in the Navy, like that shit just wasn't real anymore.
No, I completely hear that one, because I mean that's actually the pre-transition part for me. It's been really hard because part of what comes with that, and this is you got to turn over all the stuff that you've been doing, and that means you're working for somebody else, usually somebody that worked for you for at least a little bit of time.
Yeah.
And it's got some real challenges, especially the kinds of folks that tend to be successful in the Navy. We like to get our hands into everything, and we like to have a good understanding and not control to the extent of like micromanagement, but like taking our hands off the controls and letting off the throttle so that you can take care of yourself. It's a huge challenge. It's been a huge challenge for me, and that's been a pretty common experience for most of the folks I've talked to.
Yeah, and so like, give a quick like 30-second tour of your career for everybody. Like, even though I'll mention the episodes you're on previously, but just to provide a little bit of context for those that don't want to go back in time and listen to. I mean, you've been on like 5 times, so like
it's like 3 times, but
wow, is it? Yeah, I guess we did a teaching of the creed, and then we did we did
2 other episodes. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Just give me a quick synopsis, and then we'll jump back in.
So super quick and easy. I am about to retire first class. I've been a communications guy for Naval Special Warfare for basically my entire career. I've had a few other little jobs here and there. I came into the Navy as a nuke, got denuked early. For the last 16 years, I've been doing comms. And that's the very short version. The one thing about NSW, and really I think a lot of places in the Navy, is every single assignment I had was completely different than any other assignment. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Whether it was working as a detachment level comms dude, fixing radios and FLIR units and stuff like that, or, working as a command career counselor for a relatively new command, or being in a position where I was the communications officer as an E6 because I was the only communications person on board the command. Right. Yeah. So you end up having a pretty wide divergence of responsibility. So this last tour I'm on a staff. Right. And so that in and of itself presented kind of a challenge to me. And I think that it's something that is worth remembering for a lot of folks. You go from this environment where, you have your hands deeply involved in everything that's going on, and you're very operationally minded. You're very focused on that and getting the mission done. And then you go to a staff and you still have some of that mindset that you're carrying it, and the staff carries it as well. But you have a lot of moments where you realize that the really critically, crucially important thing is a PowerPoint slide deck. That may or may not actually have any operational effect whatsoever. And it may just be a set of slides with green and red blocks, right? So, for me, like I had my first dose of like, hey, I don't know what I'm doing here and I don't know what my purpose is. What was I made for, to quote the Barbie movie? When I checked in here, and I was able to find it by just diving head deep and, taking care of my sailors and working on, the problems that were there. And there were a ton of problems, because there's always a ton of problems. Right. And I'm sure that I know for a fact the gal that replaced me, the very first thing she said is, man, he left me a bunch of problems, because
I'm sure. Yeah. It's always the last guy's fault.
Yeah.
The last gal's fault. Yeah.
About 60 days or so, you can get away with that. That's what I found.
First few months. Fucking last guy. God, I relieved the shit bag. It's not my fault. I don't know.
So, I knew that something like that was coming as I was getting ready to get out. And, last year I went through this really severe bout of depression. Like, that's part of why I haven't been on the show. Part of why you and I haven't talked as much. Yeah,
I've been bugging you. Not for lack of trying.
I know. But like, before I kind of get into the purpose find piece, I just, I know you hammer this, and I know this gets hammered over and over and over again. If you are not well, get help. I had 100%. To bury one of my sailors. Well, not one of my sailors. He's one of my chiefs. Earlier this year, because he didn't. And that was hard. Because it was shortly after I had started being in my place. Right. So please, for the people around you, if for nothing else, get help. And trust me, I know exactly how hard of an ask that is, because you feel like your ruck is just too heavy and you are a weight on everyone around you. Yep. And you're not. You're worthwhile. The people around you care about you, and and the help is there.
That and press for it, like, be persistent. I see so many people just, I went to see the psycho on the ship and they sucked. So end of attempt. And it's like, you got to be real persistent sometimes. Like, I had a very unique, and I'm sure influenced from the outside experience. I still haven't gotten him to admit it. My buddy, he was my doc. I think he put my like stuff at the top of the pile or something without my asking, or something happened. It was like having like imbibed all the experiences online and from friends and just talking and the podcast and everything. It's like, I was expecting to have some trouble getting in to see a mental health provider, maybe cycling through providers, blah, 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 blah. Like first, like, I mean, I was in within a few weeks. First psychologist was amazing. So there was a lot of luck involved too, but I know my experience is anecdotal, and I just hear the horror stories. So just be persistent. Like, just don't take no for an answer, in or out of the service. Honestly, like, the VA is even worse. Like, they're overwhelmed. They try to farm you out in town, and then the out in town providers are overwhelmed, and they'll offer you maybe telemedicine or a huge wait or both. And it's like, you got to be persistent. You have to. So, yeah, man.
Yeah. And I guess this is a great place for me to pitch Naval Special Warfare, because I'll tell you, when I went into crisis, we have three psychs on staff, or three psychologists on staff at my 06 level command. And we have a psychiatrist on staff. And those are the folks that are providing for me. So again, I know I pitch this every time I come on the show, but if you're in a position to pick your next job, if you can screen to come to NSW, life is better here in a lot of ways, not least of which being that support piece.
To the shock of, I would hope, no one. It makes sense that capability made it to Naval Special Warfare in a robust way first. You know what I mean? Like, I think submarines were probably ahead of everybody in certain ways with embedded mental health, but it's still not great. Like, it's probably, I mean, because like a lot of the big vessels, like I don't know if amphibs do, but I know carriers have psychologists and psychiatrists and stuff. And I don't know how many. I know it's probably not enough, but they're there. And so, I mean, that's a lot better than, you're on a submarine, you got your E6 IDC that's been in the Navy less time than you. And it's like, that's it. Or one of the homies. And like, that's what you got. No email, no nothing. So, yeah. That's cool.
But, but, you know, going back to it, like, I kind of realized as I was getting ready to get out that I needed to figure out what I was going to do next and what I wanted my purpose to be.
Have you arrived at a rough sketch or a definitive path, or
what comes next? No.
Okay.
You know, which is kind of scary because I'm, 3.5 months out from getting out.
I don't think it's that bad of a thing either, though. Because I feel like we're all usually like flooring it to the end, and I had a weird transition where I was allowed to decelerate a little bit because of COVID and my cancer and all that other shit, and then I was on limb for mental health the last 6 months, but it just kind of all lined up, and I got to slow down a lot in the last few years, and I was in therapy as I was transitioning out, and that was one of the conversations we had was like, when have you ever taken a break? Like, tell me when you've taken like a legitimate break from what you've been doing for the last 21 years. And I was like, I was like, no, I never, man. I would take the 30 days of leave and then the travel and proceed or whatever. So there's times where I got like 42 days off, but it's like, you're in transit, you're moving, everything's
dealing with everything else.
Yeah. You're trying to find a place to live, like blah, blah, blah. And then even when, I stayed here because I went from my last boat to my last shore duty in the same place. And it was still like I spent 30 days doing like honeydew shit, like stuff around the house, building furniture, fucking shit outdoors, like just all the stuff that I had neglected while I was on the submarine.
I know for a fact that my job hunting and my terminal leave, I'm going to be spending a ton of it just doing exactly that because but I feel like he was saying, I was telling him I might just take some time off. Like I was thinking like 3 to 6 months. I was like, I'm just going to do nothing. Yeah.
And he's like, I think that's a good idea, blah, blah, blah. And I found a way to fuck it up because of course I did. But like, because I like accidentally got a job is the way I explain it. Because this guy posted in a group on Facebook about some opportunity and it was pitched as like an E6 retiring or transitioning out type thing. So I read it as like a, hey, I'll just give this to somebody I know that's like getting out. And then I get in there and read it, and it's this subject matter expert thing for developing training for CS's fleet-wide. And I'm like, it was like they used my resume to write a job advertisement. And I was just like, I want to do, and it was fully remote, dude. It was sick. And I got hired. And I mean, it was like, they were like recruiting me hard. Mm-hmm. And so I got hired and then leave it to, I mean, I love my cooks, but leave it to my community in the Navy to fuck up the contract, whatever front matter they were supposed to do, they didn't do. And so the contract didn't get awarded. So I didn't get the job. And so I had this sense of like, oh, fuck, I need to replace that with something. Yep. So then I started full-time school and simultaneously, and I don't recommend this. I did do this under supervision of a therapist. We talked about it, but then as I transitioned out, I hadn't picked up like I wasn't going right back into therapy. There was no continuity. He was basically telling me he thought I was ready to go. And I went off I'm on Zoloft and I went off my meds. So it was, that term went like this, like a slow and then,
Yeah.
And so then I took a term off. So I got like a 3-month break entirely, got back on my meds. It was like a light switch flipping back on. And then I started school that next term again because I was in a much better place, and I just decided I needed to do something. But yeah, man, I think the time I've spent it, even just as a student, because now I'm in a much better place. I'm on much more solid ground. I'm still like, I've been having a hell of a month, but like, I'm still not mental health related so much as I kept getting sick. I fucked my back up multiple times. I went from this 2 weeks of crud to a sinus infection. I just can't fucking win. But the year plus, I mean, it's almost like I was saying, it's like 1.75 years probably right now. And it's like, it's been this like decompression and like slow bleed off of a lot of the pressure and a lot of even just like the modes of thought and like just all the shit. It's like the volume got turned down slowly over time. And I explained it to my wife the other day. Like I felt like in the last probably 2 months, it's like there were parts of me that were muted or powered down or something. And I feel like some of those things are starting to like slowly come back on. It's really strange.
No, I mean, I know
not all the way back yet, but like just starting.
I had a really similar experience, just starting on antidepressants, right? Mm-hmm. Where it was like, oh, hey, this feeling that I've been having continuously for, years, that's not actually a normal feeling to have. And you shouldn't be okay with it.
Dude, have you seen that meme that's like, how much pain do you have today? And the doctor, and then the kid's like, the normal amount. And the doctor's like, the normal amount's 0. And he's like,
yep.
And you're like,
so funny story. That is exactly the metaphor I used when I was in with my psych. Okay.
I love it.
Because, and this is dark, and, I know I'm talking to an audience of grown-ups who can hear it. But
I'll put a warning at the front so you, man. Yeah.
So, the reason I went in and got medicated is because I was experiencing some pretty severe suicidal ideation. Mm-hmm. Like I was a couple days away, most likely, honestly.
Yeah.
And I went in and I saw the doc and, went through the kind of crash intervention. They did not make me go to Portsmouth, which I think might have been a community unique thing, in that because we had such strong embedded mental health, because they got commitments for me to get rid of my lethal means, they felt comfortable that I was safe to go home and be trusted. But, but I started on Wellbutrin, like literally 2 days later, and they bumped me up to a slightly higher dose.
Right.
And I stopped thinking about killing myself. But when I say I stopped thinking about killing myself, I'm not talking about just the heavy, dark stuff that I had been in. I mean, I realized I had thought about killing myself every day for multiple years. Mm-hmm. And not I'm going to go do X, I'm going to go do Y. Right.
Same.
But I just been experiencing low key SI for that long. And so I go and I talk to my psych, and I sit there and I go, the normal amount of X is, the normal amount of pain is 0. Well, it turns out also the normal amount of suicidal ideation is 0. Right. But so, I'm going through kind of trying to figure out what comes next. Right. And of course I have all this granular stuff I have to focus on right now. Right.
Sure.
So, like there's the direct retirement piece, which is difficult and challenging. And of course, part of that is that I'm still kind of in a role where I need to turn wrenches and work. And the challenge of trying to balance that with managing the retirement is, like we talked about earlier, stronger. Then the other piece is, and I promise I'll get to the what comes next piece. But,
dude, we got all the time. That's all good. Dude.
But, the retirement piece, right? So like I mentioned, I'm retiring as a first class. And now I don't know if this is a perceived thing on my part or if it's a broadly perceived, or if it's a broad thing. But like, one, the phrase career failure has gotten used a few times. And two, I didn't feel like I rated a retirement ceremony, right? Like that there was like, not that I didn't rate one from a literal perspective, but like that there was a cultural impetus that as a retiring first class versus a chief or an officer, I shouldn't be doing a ceremony. Right.
Okay.
That like what
is
you're
that an NSW specific thing, or do you feel like that's more broad?
So I had perceived it as just being a thing everywhere. Right.
Okay.
Of course, like having been an NSW, but having been exposed to other commands, I hadn't seen a lot of first class retirement ceremonies ever. Now, part of that is because a lot of communities, there's not a ton of first classes that retire. Most folks, a lot of folks pick up chief. But the other part of it was just, I think, some sort of internal perception. And, I don't want to be the center of attention. I feel like it's going to be weird.
That was me that as a Master Chief, man. Like, that's how I didn't do one. And I just felt uncomfortable with the idea. But I understand the old, like, you're doing it for your family, not for yourself. It never felt that way to me at the ceremony. There were certainly usually moments for the family, obviously, like it's programmed into every standard script and all that. But it felt like it was for the retiree more than the family by a country fucking mile. And it always grossed me out. Not like I don't ever want to begrudge anybody that little capstone event, because they've probably spent most of their career not being like given their flowers and all that and recognized, and they probably put themselves second for a long time if they were doing it right. So I don't begrudge anybody that thing. It's just, it was for me and my personality, and it would have been like torture, bro. Like I hate it. And so like, I don't, I felt that way as me. And, you know, like based on the way you're describing it, I think like everybody else, I felt a lot of pressure to do it from people because they're like, you're you have to like, I'm like, no, I don't. I just want to fade to black, man. I'm good. Like all set.
So I decided to do one. Right.
Okay.
And I decided to do it because, you know, my partner talked to me. She said, you need the closure. You need,
and I understand that completely, but I think that's a good point.
The other thing that she pointed out to me that I didn't really process is, you know, usually when you talk about it's for your family, most folks are thinking their wife or their husband and their kids. Yeah. Right. You know, for me, you know, I don't have a wife or kids. Yeah,
I mean, I have a wife, but I don't have kids or nothing. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's like, okay, it doesn't really justify on that. Right. But here's the thing. Think about every significant moment that you've had in your career.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like from graduating from A school to getting your fish.
I know.
You know, to every award you ever gotten, every time you stood in front of the formation.
Yeah.
All that stuff, all those recognitions.
Yeah.
And your parents, your siblings.
Yep.
You know, all those folks.
Yeah. I seriously considered meeting in the middle and doing like renting like a fucking Elks Lodge or something and like come drink and be merry and you can roast me and we'll call it a night. But
that's kind of what we're doing for mine, right? You know, we're fortunate we have kind of our own little building on base that is set aside for events and everything along those lines. Heritage Center, right? Which is a great term, which but you know, I'm doing the whole thing, you know, and here's the weird part. When I started asking people, you know, hey, I'd like you to be my MC. I'd like you to be my guest speaker. I want you to be in the flag pass. I want, you know, would you be willing to come and be a side boy? Will you be my presiding officer? All those questions. Nobody said no. And nobody acted like it was weird. Nobody sat there and had any of that. The response universally was, I would be honored, or I can't wait.
That doesn't surprise me. Yeah. It doesn't surprise me because you're you. And like, dude, no bullshit. So on the Cobb CMC shit.
Yeah.
Coordinating a retirement ceremony is on there. And I did one for a guy for that reason. He asked me to do it. I have no idea why. We were not super tight, but he was a chief in my mess. And he was like the problem child. Like he was like a dude that everybody universally like recognized was like the bottom P. He wasn't a bad guy. I think he genuinely most of the time wanted to help, but he also was lazy and he was kind of on his way out the door and just wasn't super engaged. Yeah, I mean, like he wasn't. Yeah. I don't want to drag him through the mud or nothing, but like,
no, man,
I wasn't on fire about doing it, but like at the same time, I felt like a responsibility to do it.
Yeah.
And that one I think was a little more difficult because I mean, I had conversations with people because I was coordinating for him and I was like, hey, can you do this? Can you do that? And there's a whole bunch of people going like, ugh, really? And I'm just like, dude, come on. Like, I get it. But that just because like the 2 years you've spent with him wasn't the best doesn't mean his whole career was that way and that he doesn't deserve the, you know, like he's here and other people aren't. And that's something, you know, like, I don't know. And so I think you probably had that experience. I'm sure there's other factors like your community and blah, blah, blah. But like,
I think some of it's that, but I think a huge chunk of it's just, you know, people given the chance to do the good thing. And I say this holding a coin that a certain podcast host got a hold of for me.
Easy day. Yeah, man.
Right.
But you like, the shit never crossed my mind of like as soon as you said it, I was like, fuck, I'll get you a fucking coin. I don't care what I got to do because it's you asking, man. Like, would I do that for everybody? I don't know. I might not be as quick to react or put in as much effort or be as like motivated to do it. It might fall off my plate or whatever. I think you give yourself your flowers a little bit in that, like the reason why I think people were so enthusiastic, a significant part of that was because it's you and because of who you are, how you carry yourself, the way you interact with your sailors. Like they know based on how you've moved through this life and interacted with them along the way that like if I get like getting the opportunity to do something like that for you as like a thank you for being the guy that you've been in this position the whole time and whatever is a big motivation for them. So like that's something to recognize and really like feel. You should feel validated by that, man. That's fucking cool.
You know, I did and I do.
Good.
So, you know, that was its own thing. Here's the other kind of angle with the retirement piece is, and this is a piece of advice I'm trying to give because I know there's a lot of other folks who are coming up on this day for them.
Yeah.
I know I hit it earlier, but you have to be willing and ready to take your hands off the controls.
Yeah.
If you did it right, if you trained your reliefs the way they're supposed to be trained, they're still going to screw up. Okay.
Yep.
They're still going to make mistakes and they're going to make mistakes. And you're going to want to sit there and immediately dive in and try to fix it because you're still there and you feel like you can.
Yeah.
And, you know, if it's critical, you should do that. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you also have to give folks the same opportunity to learn that you got. And we learn from failure as much as we learn from success, more than I think.
Yeah.
And the other part of it is that if you're always there and you're always there to jump in and help and fix things and take care of the problem, then the day you start your house hunting or your skill bridge or your terminal leave hits and suddenly you're gone. Like I have a story I told for years about getting a phone call 2 days after I left a command asking me for a combo to a safe. And I always thought it was really funny because I was like, oh yeah, you know, I brain dumped that combo the minute I left. Yeah. Here's the thing. Had I done it right, had I done what I was supposed to do,
they wouldn't have had to call you. Yeah.
They wouldn't have had to call me. And so, you know, for years, it was a fun story. And then a year or two ago, I was like, yeah, actually, I was kind of the dickhead in that particular situation. In that,
yeah, dude, I started doing these continuity binders when I was the SEL at the A school, and I forget who told me about it, but I had my relief was a surface senior chief that he was like gapped, or we were going to be gapped basically. So one of the chiefs that was there was going to hold it down for like 3 months, and then that dude was going to report and take that spot. And so I put together this really in-depth binder for him. And it was just all the tribal knowledge and shit you figure out through trial and error and networking and because we're in this really unique like place where they had just ripped the learning site out of the TSC Great Lakes and dropped it on an army base with no infrastructure, no support, no nothing. And so like you had to like figure all that out. And I mean, we did a bunch of stuff like setting up relationships where we had a full-time support corpsman that came in and fixed our overseas screening and special duty screening processes because the Army was just doing Army shit. And it's like, it's not true joint base. It was just an Army post. So it was all that crap, man. And it was huge. And he was really, really thankful that I did that. I typed up like profiles on all the, like what I had evaluated and observed in all of my instructors to give them like an idea of where they stood and what they needed to work on, what they're good at, what they're bad at, and all that stuff, man. And that, yeah, but I didn't do that. I mean, I was 15, 16 years in as a senior chief the first time I did that. So yeah, man, it's that stuff's, it's important. And it gave me really nice peace of mind rolling out of there. Like I felt good. I felt like it was all stitched up and I did everything I could. And it's like, if he was using the 60 days of fuck that last guy thing, good for him. But like, it's like, it wasn't because I didn't try hard enough. You know what I mean? Yeah,
100%. So, yeah. And I mean, and that's that's been my mindset I've carried. Cause my relief's on deck. She's doing my job. You know, she still is learning because it's a growth process and the systems I deal with are kind of complex. Right. And there's always a weird troubleshooting thing that pops up here and there. But like, accepting that and being ready to sit there and go and work on your stuff for you, because that's what you're supposed to be doing at this point. That is a key skill that you're going to learn. So
it's a tough adjustment.
Here's the other thing I want to talk about when we're talking about transition. You went to did you go to TAPS?
Yeah, I went to the standard class, and then I attempted all of the tracks except for the trade school one or whatever, the vocation. Vocational. Yeah. I loved there was a starting your own business one, like the entrepreneur one, pretty solid. The guy teaching it, I'm not he was a good dude, and he there was some good information, but he felt like one of those dudes that's like a little grifty, like he was operating in a gray area with all the business stuff and moves he was making outside of the military and stuff now. But it was still enlightening. The education one was incredible. I learned a lot of really cool stuff. That's where I learned about vocational rehab, Chapter 31's benefits with the VA, which are insane. That's what I'm using to go to school right now. I haven't touched my post 9/11 GI Bill.
Nice.
And then I tried to do the employment one, and it was a dumpster fire. They brought this lady in that she was super old and just condescending and short with us. And I got up and left. I was just like, I'm not doing this shit. Which was unfortunate, but yeah.
So for me, my TGPS TAPS experience, almost the entirety of it was the way you described your last one, right? Like I had
unfortunate. I had a great experience that was the only like pure negative experience. I thought the rest of it was incredible. I thought the 5-day original joint was really, really good too. They were bringing in, and shout out to, Naval Base Kitsap Banger, Fleet and Family Support. They're the guys there. I think it's got all guys. There's a handful of girls that do the transition shit too, but they were fucking incredible. They were cramming in like guest speakers while we ate our lunch and shit that they didn't have to do. They were fucking amazing. So like they did everything they could. I loved it.
I'm not trashing Naval Base Norfolk when I say that the Norfolk one was not that, right? And I think a big function of that is just the volume they're dealing with, because they do it for every single base in the region, right? So from Fort Eustis and Langley all the way down all the naval bases, they are the regional synchronizer for TAP for DoD. So like when I showed up on Monday morning, I was a walk-on. There were 3 retiree classrooms.
Mm-hmm. God, Jesus.
4 E4 or E5 and E6 classrooms, and 3 E4 and below classrooms, plus a virtual class being run at the same time.
Good Lord.
When you're talking about that demand signal, it's going to be crazy. So I came out of it, and like the VA briefer, she was amazing. Like I had I finally understand VA math now after 20 years of having been told it's not 1 + 1 = 2.
I understand it for like 5 minutes, and then if I'm not reading it, I have to go back and look. But I know it's weird.
Yeah. But the other part of it is just kind of like explaining what the benefits were and what was available and that whole thing. That was great. But, the sting that stuck was, day 3, we had this dude who came in, and it was an employment briefer. And, he's talking to a room full of, folks who are retiring. Like, this is not a general purpose room. And he's sitting there, and he just immediately talked down to us hard. And he was a food service warrant who had retired.
Of course.
I promise you, I'm not bringing this up just to.
I want to know his name after we're done. I want to know.
if I remembered, I would, man. But
I'll write it down, and hopefully I remember to ask.
But if he got out and he did like 1 year in the real world, and then got hired as the contractor for TGPS,
and is suddenly an expert on employment,
and he's just sitting there and just shred and I get that there's value in not having people think that, I'm just going to step out of the Navy and directly into whatever because they're going to hire me because they need a chief, right? Because real world, nobody really needs a chief per se. They need a leader. They need somebody that has a good understanding of But the role of the Navy chief doesn't fit 1-to-1 into real world roles, is what I'm saying.
For sure,
I'm not saying they don't need the skills that chiefs bring, or that a first class brings, or that an officer brings. But what I'm saying is that the 1-to-1 match of the skill set of LPO or LCPO or DIVO, department head, whatever, doesn't exist. Right. And so, he was hitting on that, but he was also just broadly sort of like, if not for the fact that I knew he was talking to a retiree, that he knew he was talking to a retiree classroom, I would have assumed he was trying to scare us all to stay Navy for another few years, the way he was talking.
Yeah. He's probably sad he's not still a warrant. Like, dude, those guys, there are good food service warrants out there, and I know some of them. But goddamn, almost everyone I've ever worked with, I wanted to smother with a pillow. Like, they're fucking. Oh God. And it's not warrants broadly either. Something about food service warrant officers, bro. I don't know what the fuck. It's like, oh fuck. They're just, and I'm talking like it was like having a shitbag E3 I had to worry about. Like that's how bad I was managing them, like they were my problem child E4. It was fucking bananas, but that's neither here nor there, I guess. So I have scar tissue with fucking food service warrants. Jesus Christ.
I totally get it, dude. Trust me, I have a few flavors of folks in my career. I have similar busted knuckles over. But so I finished TGPS and I'm like, okay, cool, that was useful, ? Right. And I've got the books and I go through them. A couple weeks later, we have this like resource expo, which is another thing I'm going to pitch. If your community does one of these, right? Like, I get it. It's 5:00. It's Liberty time. Yeah. You want to be at home playing video games, saving Super Earth with the Helldivers or drinking beer or whatever it is you do.
Yeah.
Take the time to go to these because these are people that are showing up specifically to be like, here, we have stuff to give you. And
right.
In this case, the organization I fell in under was the Honor Foundation, right?
Okay.
Now, the Honor Foundation, the best way I can possibly explain it is if the DoD was really serious about transition, this is what it would look like.
Okay. I've never heard of it.
So it's soft special operations specific for all branches.
Okay.
Right. But
okay.
I'm not an operator. I'm in the class.
Yeah, but
I know I'm a career dude, but
you're in the community. Yeah. No, it makes sense.
So, but half my cohort, they are non-operators, right? Maybe a little less than half. And they're all folks that have been in the
more, dude. I figured the support folks would be like 75% of the community just based on like, because if you think about like the normal trigger pullers in the Army is like a small fraction of the
number wise. Yeah. The community is, I think overall Naval Special Warfare community is about 70% support folks, uniform and civilian. Right.
Gotcha.
That said, when you have these organizations that support special operations, they tend to very much focus on the folks that hold the NEC or the MOS for the operator, right? As they should, right? Because these are dudes that, these are the dudes that are there for it. And it's a lot of for us, by us stuff, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Honor Foundation, they have some of that, but they look a little bit more broadly.
Okay.
So I interview with the director of people there, and she goes, you need to put in an application for this. And so,
hell yeah,
I put in an application, I get my letters of recommendation, which, if you ever want to, by the way, if you ever want to really be touched, ask your best friend to write you a letter of recommendation for something.
Bro, I had one of my professors from school. I'm applying to grad school for master's in psych and counseling. And you need letters of recommendation. One of my professors, she's taught two of my classes, and I've talked to her a bunch because she's the only counseling psychologist that's on the faculty that I'm aware of, that, or at least that I've had as a professor. And the letter she wrote, bro, like a page and a half of just like, holy shit, that I was just like, it punched me in my guts. Like, it was incredible. And I mean, she's my favorite teacher by a country mile at that school, but like, God, I didn't see it coming, man. I thought it was going to be a very sanitary one page, like, yeah, he's good, fucking admit him, but it was not that at all. And I love her. She's great, but like, I don't know her that well. You know what I mean? Like, she was just my professor, but she's fucking incredible.
It goes back to what I was saying before about like the right people, if you ask them, will do the right thing for you.
Yeah.
So, my best friend,
she's a good one, man. Love her. Shout out to Dr. O'Donnell. She's probably not listening, but
my best friend, he wrote me this super heartfelt letter. Right. And then I went to my TICOM deputy commander because I had to have a senior leader write my other letter. And I had worked for him on and off for a lot of the last few years. Right. Because his senior leader has comms issues, and he wrote me a similarly like glowing letter. Like, I had to ghost it for him a little bit, but he turned it into, like a really deep and meaningful thing. Submit my resume, which is a resume, which, by the way, again, for those of you getting ready to get out, or even those who are in, bro. write a resume, make a LinkedIn page. I get it. It's uncomfortable. LinkedIn was really uncomfortable for me.
I hate it so much, dude.
But you got to do that stuff. And it's easier if you're doing it in your work. It's like evals. You know, if you have a notebook that reflects everything that you did, then it's a lot easier to sit there and make it put it together than to try to sit there and reconstruct 20 years or however many years.
And
from
quick
memory.
Aside, like civilian resume, federal resume, wildly
totally different things. Yes.
Wildly different. Like the USA jobs process is its own unique niche thing that you need to learn about. And like, I'm blessed to be in a family on my wife's side where everybody works at the Naval shipyard and has for like ever. So they're very well versed in it. So like the times I've done a bunch of resumes, I've applied for a bunch of jobs. I haven't gotten hired anywhere except for the one that fell through contracting wise. But I've learned a lot by doing it though. So like if I ever do go down that road, it's like I know how it works now, and it is so different than applying to a civilian job. So make sure you're learning both modalities,
and like we don't
so different.
So we don't really talk about federal resumes in Honor Foundation, right? And I know they don't really get talked out about beyond, hey, they're going to be much more detailed in DGUTS.
Yeah.
And I'll be straight up, I don't have the expertise on it. You know, if my advice to anybody who is seeking federal after they get out is find a GS that you know, like, and respect, and get them to work with you on the process. Like, not to sit there and
webinars and shit out there too. And like, there's resources.
Yeah. But, so Honor Foundation, I get selected and I show up, and, you know, this is an experience that I think a lot of folks have. You know, I felt like the least qualified person to be in that room, listening to everybody else who stood up and talked about what they were doing. Like, why am I here? Like, that dude's...
I was the cook chief my whole career, bro. I feel you. Like, I had that complex my whole career.
Yeah. And I mean, you know, like, my cohort has like prior command master chief in it, a prior commanding officer, you know. And one of the things I love about this organization is it starts to hit you with that thing I talked about kind of the real world. Everyone's first name's an equal from day one, right? Like,
all that hierarchy shit gets thrown out the window until you're within a new one. So it's like, you're just a guy, bro.
Yeah.
Like,
and so it's broken up into 3 phases, which, you know, I think is done from a place of familiarity, because almost all special operations, you know, onboarding trainings are broken up into 3 phases. And the way it's set up is your equipment, your journey, basically. And so that's taking you apart, right? And this is one of those things we're talking about purpose. So when you're a chief, when you're in, you know, when you're on a ship, when you're at a SEAL team, when you're at an EOD mobile unit, whatever, you have a purpose that is externally defined. Right? Like, you don't need to consider what you're doing and why, right? Because why am I doing it? Because I swore an oath and I'm defending my country, and there's a trident on the wall that tells me what I'm doing is important, right? For my organization, or you know, or
for sure. And it's really important, dude. That point you just made about like your entire career, you could always fall back on just point at the fucking trident on the wall, and you're like, I know our mission is important. I know I mean, like, I had that on Jimmy Carter. I mean, I don't know, when I was young and on my first boat, I was too caught up in what was right in front of me, and holy shit, I got to get my fish, and then all the other things. And then I was stressed out, and then I got bitter and jaded at the end. But like, I wasn't thinking about those kinds of things on my first boat. But like on Jimmy Carter, it was like that there. It wasn't like that on my first boat, really, except when we were my very first Westpac, we shot missiles for Iraqi freedom and stuff. But yeah, and then on my third boat, it was completely missing because it was a BN punching holes in the water at 5 knots to nowhere, just in case World War III happens, which is a lot more relevant nowadays. But back then, it was like not a thing you thought was going to ever happen. So it was like you're on a training platform. All we did was drill and kill and keep it moving, you know. And so like it became very obvious that the sense of purpose and sense of just mission, and that I'm doing something meaningful on Jimmy Carter, it was just innate. Like, everybody just knew. And you never had, even the babies, like even the new kids, it was like you very rarely had to like explain to somebody why we were working so long or why we didn't get to be in port more or why this or that or the other thing, and it's like,
I mean, you don't have to pitch
for you. I think that's important to it, like, and a kind of a cool feature of your community is like, you don't got to worry about that. That's like one less thing all the leadership has to focus on, because you and I imagine there's like I imagine the SEAL side of it, like the operator side of it, they might have to do a little more of that, because you can get used to anything after a while. So career SEALs, it's like, that's just what they do. Where you guys always have that feeling of like, you're kind of a guest here. So it's like got this novelty to it that never goes away, or this, like, you just have like this, you feel the privilege of being there
100%.
that maybe can get lost on someone that is immersed in it and wearing a trident for a really long time. But man, that's fucking cool.
And don't get me wrong, like, there have definitely been days when I had a lot of cynicism. I actually,
sure.
The weird moments for me have been, like, especially this command, sometimes we have cleaner escorts. Like, we have the folks that come in and clean the heads and all that are contracted. Somebody has to escort them. And so it rotates between the departments, and whoever has like kind of the least going on at a given moment will be the guy or gal that goes and does it. And so there have been a few times where I'm sitting there watching some gal scrub a toilet, and I'm like, I'm getting paid $100,000 a year to watch somebody else clean. And, is this the Navy's best use of the Navy's resources? Maybe not.
For real.
But, you know, you also, sometimes that's the job. But, you definitely have those moments of cynicism where you're like, I'm not sure what the merit of what I'm doing here today is. For the operators, especially in a post-Afghanistan environment, like, there's a little bit more of that seeking justification. Because a lot of these dudes, they joined to go and shoot, right? And the mission now is, it's training. It's specifically, it's training them up and then going and training our partners.
For now. Shit in
and
Iran and Israel's popping off right now. Shit's getting weird over there.
That's all going to come where it comes, right? Like, I've been doing this in this community for 16 years. And, the number of times it was like, oh, we're getting ready to do this. Oh, we're getting ready to do that. I was on deployment to the Philippines when the Norks sank that Korean Corvette, or the North Korean South Korean Corvette with a mini sub. And we were convinced that was going to be it. And we were going to sit there and have to go hit that op plan. And we had brought an ISU with all of our winter gear with us, because the Koreas are cold, unlike, the Philippines. And so we were rare and getting ready to go. And then PACOM comes back and they go like, no, we don't need you to do that. We need you to continue to do this counterterrorism mission that you guys are on right now. So, but yeah, I mean, here's the thing though, you hit it on the head that, like, I never had to internally justify. So when I suddenly realized I was going to have to sit there and start internally justifying for myself, like, that's a much bigger step than if you had to sit there and find that motivation, when you're punching holes in the ocean at 5 knots, or when you're, just going through train up after train up or in the yards or whatever, right? And I understand that, folks struggle with purpose there for sure, but. So what they kind of do in Honor Foundation is they make you kind of take yourself apart. And like, you literally have a book and you write, some of what you write is like the stuff I don't like very much about myself. Where have I failed? What am I not willing to look at right now? How would my life change if I did look at it? Right. Which is stuff that I strongly advise for folks to sit there alongside looking at. I
like it already.
Looking at the good stuff that they want and they want to sustain and grow in, the stuff that they love, that gives them passion, gives them fire outside of the building. Right. Taking all that and you use that, and then you kind of go from there and you build on that and you find your why. Right. And so, and finding your why is a multi-step process. Like, you tell some stories from your life, and you have other people listen to the themes in them. And, from those themes, they derive things that you care about that relate to you. It culminates where you find a why statement, right? Which, it doesn't have to be something that goes on the top of your resume, though. For a lot of folks, that's exactly what they're using it for, is like their LinkedIn banner. Right. And I'll give you guys mine, which is,
I was going to ask if you were cool sharing it.
Yeah, I'm totally cool sharing it. I break the rules just enough to help my team win the hardest fights.
Okay.
And
I like it.
Basically, look, I mean, I would never have succeeded in the Navy outside of naval special warfare because I have very little inherent respect for authority.
Okay? I'm the same way, dude. But kinda. Probably, yeah. Maybe more moderate, but yeah.
And I have a mouth on me that has, has earned me a number of interesting experiences.
Bro, if you had made chief, it would have become an asset. You would have been fucking a vocal advocate for your people. But what, E6 and below, you got an attitude problem.
Yeah, well,
and have trouble respecting authority and shit.
Oh, trust me,
it's
the number of times I had in my eval debrief, hey, you need to work on your military bearing. What do you mean by that?
Yeah.
And it's like either
you got a big fucking mouth.
Yeah. It's like literally I had an eval debrief, which, boy, we really need to do a better job explaining to sailors earlier, like what exactly is being said in an eval debrief and what isn't. Because I had my first eval at Navy recruiting, I had a below Riska unranked P, and it was not insignificantly below Riska. I definitely was being used to help knock down COs. That was my welcome aboard, right? So it wasn't. But
I feel like there's a culture within the recruiting community, and it's not always true. I had a guy that worked for me. He was an LS2 that went and recruiter of the fucking year, sailor of the year, number one EP, all that. But there seems to be I had a lot of really close interactions and got to kind of look into a specific recruiting district that we worked with a lot for chief season stuff when I was at the A school, and it was it seemed like the fleet recruiters that were there as just shore duty were getting just used and abused like consumables, and the NCs all got the sweet deals and were, the ones in charge and the ones getting recognized and doing less work and all that.
That is exactly how it works. The NC community, the NCR community refers to, their A school, down at Pensacola as crossing to the dark side. Right. And
sounds about right.
I used to be a lot more cynical about them. I'm a little bit less cynical now. I actually feel pretty bad for anybody that's on recruiting duty these days because
now
it's super rough, right? But so that I believe in breaking the rules just enough, right? To sit there and that can be things like helping sailors. Hey, I had a sailor that was having just repeated home issues. And I sat there and I said, hey, you stay home, you figure your stuff out, you call me, you let me know what's going on. I will take care of everything else. You don't need to be here right now. Did I have the authority in my role that I was in at that point to tell the T4 go home? No. Was anybody going to say anything to me if I got caught? Probably. Was I going to sit there and yell right back in their face about it? Yeah. And,
I've done that, dude.
And and that is the mindset that I've tried to carry, right? But it's also when it comes to weird problem sets, like technical problem sets. Hey, if we do this, will this work better? Is this a necessary part of the process? So that's the finding your why piece.
But here's a fun fact about everything you just explained about yourself. God bless Jason Thompson. He's the homie. I love him to death. He would always say, why are we not evaluating sailors based on who I want next to me in a fight versus all this other superfluous bullshit in a peacetime military? What you just described is exactly what everybody will value in a wartime service member, because the SOPs and rules and policies and all that shit are great and they're necessary and for all the things, for equipment safety, for personnel safety, for getting the mission done, blah, blah, blah. But shit's going to go sideways. The enemy gets a vote. Shit's going to break, blow up, malfunction, blah, blah, blah. And there's going to be times where I don't got time to hang a fucking danger tag or whatever. You got to fight hurt, get the fucking platform back online, get the system fucking rebooted, whatever. Get even a person. It's like, if we're getting fucking depth charged on a submarine, I don't get to get an SIQ chip for 48 hours and go lay in my rack till my boo-boo feels better. I get to fucking rub some dirt on it and go do the shit I got to do. You know what I mean? So I could be stand and dive fucking bleeding out of my, ears or something. Yeah. I don't know. But that's what it would look like in a holistic, no shit kinetic conflict.
Yeah. Large scale combat operations are a whole different ball of wax.
Everything you just explained though is that your why statement is exactly what it should be for a warfighter, man. And it's like, it's a very, that will become a very, very, very valued skill set, or like foundational set of principles in which to interpret the world that we operate in, that I feel like is largely missing. And so that's why, like, you see in history, man, you study any kind of like historical conflicts, it's like there's always a fucking learning curve.
Yeah.
Always. You hear Jocko and the homies talk about it all the time, about the beginning of the war on terror, and you know, and even like you go back, Petraeus has got a bunch of cool papers about Vietnam and like all the things they learned from that conflict and how we need to do things differently going forward. And it's like, yeah, there's always this steep learning curve, because going from a peacetime military to a wartime military is like, and all of a sudden all that dumb shit falls away, you know.
And every fight's different, right? Like that's the other thing, is that, you know, like, you know, we are getting such a gift right now, and other people are paying for it in blood with the Ukraine war, because we are seeing what war is going to look like, what the next war is going to look like that we're going to fight, right? Because, you know, I don't consider Russia to be a pure threat anymore, based on how they've performed.
I haven't for a long time, based on,
well, their boats are one thing, but the ground army.
Yeah, well,
you know,
and that's how I was viewing it. If 100%, like if we're on the ground against Russia, it's a whole different conversation. Like it'll look like World War II. I mean, their casualty numbers will be infinitely higher, but they just got bodies to throw at the problem.
Yeah, well, it's a philosophy of warfare, right? So you know, like actually the perfect way to explain it is, when it comes to on the ground side of things, and boy, we are way out of the topic, but we do
it's all good, dude. Tangents are gonna happen.
We do maneuver warfare, right? So we'll have 3 maneuver assets to 1 artillery or supporting fires asset, and the Russians do fires warfare. So they'll have 3 artillery or similar assets to 1 maneuver unit, right? Which is to say, you know, like, that is why you're seeing these massive, hugely destroyed,
blown up and shit.
Well, tanks getting blown up, but it's also, you know, if you look at what like some of these cities look like, you know, every city in Ukraine looks the way that Mosul did after we kicked ISIS out of there. But the difference is that when we kicked ISIS out, you know, we were sitting there and we were doing this block by block fight with the Iraqis, and the Iraqis kind of they dictated the tactics, where we sat there and clear a block and they would blow it to pieces, clear a block, blow it to pieces. Because that was the only way to win this fight. The Russians have taken that approach literally every city they've taken. So like Mariupol, Avdiivka, you know, Bucha, like all these places, these names, right, of these cities that if you look at the pictures of them, they are cratered, flat. Yeah, but
rubble.
We're seeing, you know, the use of artillery. We're seeing drone warfare and drone warfare in a whole different context. Like drones for me, they were always, oh yeah, there's a Pred or a Reaper up there, and it's got a Hellfire, a few Hellfires on the rails, and you know they lays the target, and they'll sit there and they'll drop a bomb down onto you know a dude or a group of dudes or whatever. And you know, with this, you know, with like literally having a quadcopter drop a grenade from 1,000 feet into the top of a tank and blow it to pieces. Or, you know, having first-person drones that have a shaped charge on them that they'll fly directly into a trench. You know,
oh wow, even the Iran launching all those suicide drones. Like I had seen that in like fiction. You know what I mean? Like there's like a movie with like one of those Gerard Butler movies where he's a Secret Service guy, and I'm a dork about like I've been reading like Tom Clancy novels since I was a kid, and I just like spy stuff and whatever. But some of those I've seen that like concepts in books and media, but I've never heard of it happening in real life until they just did what they did, even though there's more to it than, you know, they kind of telegraphed it on purpose for political reasons and whatever. But
there's also been, you know, like you haven't seen it, but there have been mass drone attacks before. Like the Russians have done a ton of them during the war. And then also ISIS did a bunch of them.
You know that. I know people have used drones, and like organizations like non-state actors have used drones. I just didn't know they had done like swarm attacks like that or whatever.
You know, I mean, the thing is that it's easy to build if you don't need to have it land and you don't need to recover it. Building a drone that carries things for a decent distance is pretty easy. And so
cheap.
And so, they bought a bunch of styrofoam, remote controlled airplanes, put a little bit of a shape charge into them and did a mass launch on a targeted area and, did a lot of damage for a relatively low cost. And so that's kind of the non-state actor, but the large scale conflict operation piece, we're getting to see what these super asymmetric concept, in conflicts are going to look like and what it's going to look like to sit there and be in an environment where neither side has air superiority. Right. Yeah. So every fight the United States has been in since before I was born, we've had air superiority. Right. And we've had air power and we've had the ability to sit there and control that. And that has given us such a huge advantage in all those fights. Well, the Russians, 2 years and change into this war, they don't have air superiority. And we're partly I don't want to say to blame because that sounds like we're doing something wrong, but like we're the reason for that, right? Because of the equipment and assets that we provided and the training we provided, and eventually the airplanes that I'm sure we're going to end up providing.
I thought we already did. Like, I thought we were already sending them F-18s or
so
whatever.
There had been a conversation about
at least talked about it.
F-16s had been the conversation.
Okay.
Right. And there are people learning to fly F-16. There are Ukrainian pilots learning to fly F-16s. That's publicly known. But in terms of actually the technology transfer of giving them F-16s, that has not happened yet. Right. Okay. But that's, that future conflict that we're getting to see, and everything with that, those casualty numbers, we've gotten so used to this. You kind of hit it on the head talking about, learning to harden up and learning that risk factor. Right. Yeah. We're so used to being able to sit there and get a helicopter in the air and aero evac anybody. And it's like, basically, if you have anything short of an immediately lethal wound, there's a good chance that we can keep you alive and save you. Right? Yeah. Like, we have a whole trauma technique that we've learned to practice that, called damage control trauma. That is, as a sailor, I have to say, I love hearing damage control used in any context. Right. But damage control trauma, which is literally about dealing with like massive, potentially lethal injuries, in austere environments, right? And like we can do that. That's a capability we bring to the fight when we're fighting a non-state actor in relatively small numbers in a conflict area that we completely control. But that same fight in Taiwan, no, it's a totally different concept, and that is something when we talk about like mindset and mindfulness and the warrior toughness thing, as cynical as I was about it when I heard about it initially, right? There's value to that. Like, and that's a huge thing.
Yeah. 100%.
Rolling all the way back.
Let's reel you back in, dog.
Yeah.
Let's go back. I mean, that was my fault, but
so from the why, right? The next thing you do after that is you do this thing called story night. Right.
Okay.
And story night is kind of exactly what it says in the tin. You take a couple days and you pick a story from your life. I'm not going to share mine and I'm not going to share anybody else's because they were all pretty intensely personal. And part of it is about opening up to the room. Part of it is about, talking about something important that happened to you and sharing what you learned from it and how it relates into your why. Mine didn't do a super great job of that because I didn't read the instructions so I guess it did relate to my why. But the point of it is to, get you comfortable standing in front of a room and talking about yourself. Right. Because we always talk and you hear me doing it. It's we, the team, the group, my crew, my guys, my gals, my people, my sailors, my team. Getting out, it's a team of one, maybe a team of two. Yeah. Right. And so getting to be in that place where you're talking about something deeply personal that happened to you, whether it be funny or, whether it be an incredible learning experience that you had, I'll give you what my opening line was. I'll give you one other opening line from somebody else. The average time for a 250-pound man to succumb to hypothermia in 54-degree water is 3 hours. That's mine. And the average, and then my friend Frank, his was a simple, very short phrase. I loved combat. Yeah. And so having, and you guys listening to this, you hear those deeply personal phrases, right? Like, you obviously know there's some trauma that you're opening up.
There's a story attached to that. It's not just, I remember this niche fact about hypothermia.
Yeah.
Like there's an experience very much linked to that introductory line. Yeah.
And
100%.
so, and it's also teaching you how to learn to control a room. Right. Because I'll tell you, when I said that phrase
to capture them. Yeah. To capture them. Okay. You got you. Yeah. Both of those. I'm hooked.
I had 80 eyeballs on me immediately, and the room was dead silent. Yep. Right. So you do that and you listen to everybody else's story. And right. Part of what you're also learning to do when you're sitting there and you're listening is like, okay, this is the group of men and women that I'm with. Yeah. I want to emphasize it's men and women in this. This is not a dude only 100%. Thing. And then from there you go and
Desiree's an NSW.
I know,
doing the damn thing again right now. So there's definitely plenty of women out there. She's at her second tour with NSW. Yeah,
I've got can't think of any. I've got a few folks I can think of offhand that they're on third and fourth tours. It's kind of like I was. My friend Ashley. Actually, she desperately wants to talk to you. I think she initially.
Oh yeah.
I talked to you about it. Yeah.
Yeah, we exchanged. Yeah. Sign me up, dude.
No,
say less. I feel like people have this weird like celebrity thing about me or some. It's like, dude, I'll fucking talk to anybody.
Oh, I know you.
Just hit me up.
I know you will, dude.
You don't need. I'm just saying, like, so like people like Ashley that are out there that want to come on the podcast. You don't need to go through Dan. You don't need to go through your version of Dan. Just fucking email me. I will talk to anybody. I'm just a guy doing a thing. Like, hit me up. But I feel like people feel like there's some weird barrier to entry. There's not.
I think it's just that, folks are used to like, when you have, Fleet Master Chiefs on there and they have you on there, and stuff along those lines, it's a very different kind of conversation for folks than, you and I, we've talked enough that I'm comfortable, very comfortable with you. But like there is, if I had known you first as, Master Chief, might have been a little bit more apprehension walking in. But so Ashley, and I'm going to take a minute to just talk about how great this person is before I get back into Honor Foundation.
Give me a primer.
So Ashley is among many, many, many hats she has worn. She's done 2 tours in NSW. She's done some time with EOD. She's done some time with divers. Right now, she's at a schoolhouse helping them make things.
What's her?
She's an ET.
Okay.
Same as me.
Gotcha.
We were at the command together, or at my last command together, and she got yanked after she picked up Chief to go over and go be there. But, she's actually going to be the MC in my retirement ceremony.
Yeah.
But literally one of the best people I've ever known. Like, incredibly driven, smart, was ready to wear khakis probably 5 years before I met her, and kind of suffered from the same thing that I did. In that, same mouthy attitude, same, I
bet you she'd tell you it's an asset now, isn't it?
Oh yeah.
They love it.
But that's the thing I want you to understand is that, she has, and part of why I want to get her on with you, she has some unique insights about what it was like being in my community, in our community as a woman much earlier.
Yeah.
Right. Like now, it's kind of it's a little bit different conversation, but
I would love to hear it. 'Cause like Desiree had some experiences that were pretty rough.
Yeah.
And she talked about some of them on the podcast. The very first time me and her talked, I don't remember if it was on Seeds of Triumph or if it was on here, but same kind of thing. And so I'd be very interested to hear I'm always curious what it's like, what the experience is like for, like, I really want to find a guy that was a chief in like the 90s or 80s or 70s even, and talk to them and just see like what was like. I want to open the time capsule and kind of get an idea of what it was like and how it differs. And so that would be a really interesting perspective too. So
I don't know if I'd ever be able to convince him to talk to you, but I've got a dude who made chief during the season that was held over 9/11 that I work with.
Oh, that'd be cool. I mean, I made it the year after that. But I'm down, dude. I'm down. But everybody's got a story, bro. I'm down to talk to anybody.
Yeah.
I love it.
But, so the other things about Ashley, like just this incredibly driven, strong amazing human being, played for the all Navy softball team.
Oh, damn.
And, when I was in crisis, she was the person I went to ask to hold on to my guns for me. Right.
Yeah.
Like deep and profound level of trust. And also that proof, again, that the right people given the opportunity, they're going to do the right thing for you. But just brilliant, awesome lady. And I look forward to hearing her, the Texas twang come out of her mouth on here.
Hell yeah. Dude, we almost moved to Texas when I retired, but it just didn't.
She and I had
inflation and mortgages and interest rates threw a monkey wrench in that plan. So I'm stuck here in this cheap house I got.
I mean, I'm getting ready.
Things could be worse.
I'm stuck in Hampton Roads for the next couple of years because my partner got orders to a ship here, and I was so looking forward to seeing Eastern Virginia behind me. But so
there's worse places to be, man,
for sure. So after story night, you do find your why, right? Or actually, those two things happen roughly around the same time as each other. You do a whiteboard. It's called a whiteboard session. You work with a coach, like literally like a life coach, right? And actually everybody is also assigned a coach.
Okay.
I'm going to have a conversation with her.
Are the people doing it legitimately life coaches, or is it just kind of like that's the way that the type of role kind of?
Coach is the term used. Like the folks that did whiteboards, they are life coach type folks. They're life and executive coaching folks.
Okay.
But like my coach, she's a senior HR person at ODU. There's other folks that are like directors of management or vice presidents of companies.
So is this like they're coming in and just playing this role on a voluntary basis or like a part-time basis for the Honor Society?
These are all people
and they're like
Honor Foundation.
Okay.
But they are all volunteers from the civilian community. Like there's some folks that are prior fellows, but mostly it's, just people from the community that care.
Just people that, cool.
That's
dope.
Like that's like my coach. She had no relationship with the Navy or Naval Special Warfare other than living in, Norfolk prior to being with the Honor Foundation.
And do they do it in a bunch of locations?
Yeah. So Honor Foundation is done here. And when I say here, I mean, Tidewater, Virginia,
Hampton Roads,
San Diego, Fort Lewis, Washington. So kind of Tacoma area.
Oh, okay.
Fort Liberty.
It's not far from me.
Down in North Carolina. Eglin Air Force Base down in Florida. And then they have virtual convenes west and east as well every cycle. Now,
I'm gonna look into that, dude. If I can be of use, that would be super cool.
Yeah,
I would happily volunteer.
And I strongly recommend it. They're an awesome organization, and I mean,
that's sick.
One of the nice things about any organization with Navy SEAL or Army Special Forces operators, like the money's there, right? And so there's a lot. It's a really, and the volunteers are there. People really care about this. I wish that this was not something that was unique to our organization, and it's not fully. But it's just people love the swoosh.
I get it though. It's like I always feel that way in the podcast universe, where like a Navy SEAL can just start up a podcast and have $50,000 a month coming in from Patreon, and here I am fucking scraping away to try to get like my bills paid just to like break even. But and it's like whatever, it is what it is. But I just like I'm jealous, but at the same time, like I mean, they're at the tippy point of the fucking spear. Like there's a tremendous barrier to entry, and then like the sacrifice and the shit they do, man. I'm not saying it's like I'm not saying it's more important than what everyone else is doing, but I'm not saying it's not, it's special. It is definitely special.
And I think special, that special is the key word, right? Because the biggest thing that distinguishes special warfare from, conventional warfare is not, a huge chunk of it is the people, but it's also that the missions are divergent from the norm, right? If it could be, if it could be done by an infantry platoon and not a SEAL platoon, it would be.
Right. It would be. Yeah. 100%.
So going kind of back into it after you do story night, you start going into doing some of your development of your skill set you need to have around, being a grown up in the workforce. Right. And so doing your resume and, writing that and you get your resume reviewed by a bunch of pros that sit there. They know how to read resumes and give you advice on everything from like font color and choices to layouts to what belongs where and word choice. Right. There's a lot of words that we use that do not translate into the real world. And if they do translate into the real world, they don't translate well. Right. You know?
Yeah. Well, and even in the federal arena, dude, it's like you have to translate it from your branch of service, specialty, community, whatever, into like federal whatever language. And it's dependent on where you're trying to get the job and all that kind of shit. So yeah, it's a lot harder than I even thought it would be, man. And I'm an English guy. Like, I'm a wizard with words, and I still like had a really hard time trying to get my resume to not be clunky and stupid and meet cert and get to the hiring managers and all that kind of thing. So yeah, it's a process.
And you know, the next thing you kind of do is you do a LinkedIn class, right? Where you take the resume and you figure out how to translate it in LinkedIn, because it's not 1-to-1 of like, you know, copy, paste, and splot. Right. And like how networking works and all that, right? You know, it's just a key thing, right? And I think that TGPS is just like, LinkedIn is a thing. And that's it.
Networking is, and I'm like fucking allergic to it, bro.
And that's,
I'm like
so
bad at it.
Okay.
I'm so bad at asking people for shit.
So the,
like,
I'm going to give the universal thing. And cause I had the same kind of attitude. It's like, I hate networking. I hate doing this. Yeah. But this is the thing that we heard over and over from the hiring managers. Cause we had a panel night where we had, you know, some entrepreneurs, like, and we had a dude like you talked about, who's kind of on the, ooh, I don't know that I necessarily want a ton of advice from you, because you don't seem like you're necessarily coloring in the lines.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, but then, you know, with a bunch of different hiring managers for different companies. And one of the things they talked about basically is like, hey, networking isn't necessarily going to get you hired all by itself, though it can. But what networking will make sure of is that your resume doesn't get lost in the churn, right? So if you look at like any kind of fully remote position or anything along those lines, it has hundreds of applicants for it right now.
Right.
And, you know,
a lot of my buddies said too, like most positions are filled internally, or they like know the candidate if they're not already working there, kind of things, but they have to advertise it. Yeah. So like, that's what networking is super good for. It was something like 60% of jobs or something are filled that way.
60% of jobs, 60% of openings are filled from networking. 30-something% are filled from like outside applications, and then like 5 to 6% are filled by recruiting, like direct aggressive recruiting. Right? It's a you know, it's rough math, you know, for folks that are just kind of sitting there and throwing resumes at the problem. Yeah. So learning how to network, and then, you know, we have a couple things that, you know, come out after that where we do these treks, right? So we're like, you know, we have one of those this week. We're gonna get hauled around to a bunch of different businesses in the area and meet their hiring managers and kind of talk about their process and have them look at resumes and all that. And then the week after that, you know, and this is one of those places where the resources of that, you know, Honor Foundation has, because they're a special operations specific organization. Yeah. We're getting flown up to New York to sit there and do that for 4 days.
That's so sick.
And I mean,
that's sick.
So part of why I want to pitch this is I know that there's other folks in NSW and in the EOD and other special operations communities. Like, I'll tell you outright, like if you're a recon corpsman, if you're an EOD guy, if you're a diver, if you're any kind of dude who's done some decent time in NSW, if you're a SEAL, a SWIC, right? If you're probably, you know, if you're a helo pilot, right? Who's done some special operations support stuff, or an air crewman, right? Honor Foundation probably has a space for you. Like, it's competitive, don't get me wrong. Like, you need to sit there and do the work. But, you know, when I think about how all the things that DoD could do with transition, like, we're not going to be able to do sitting there and having folks fly out to a different area. But you know what we 100% could do?
But you don't need to in most areas. There's people fucking there. Yeah. Like, I'm an hour from Seattle. We can hop on the ferry.
Yeah, you can hop
and
on.
Go to, you know, Amazon, like, or fucking, you know,
you could sit there and, you know, or have, you know, like more aggressively have folks come in, like have a day set aside for TGPS where folks are going to have their hiring managers. Make the, you know, because I mean, I'll tell you outright, as a CCC, I didn't gaff off, you know, my sailors that were helping me get out, because it was very important to me that they have the smoothest transition I could. But like the CCC wears 15 hats. Okay.
Yeah.
And, and, you know, so like if I have a choice between making the CO happy with my, you know, CRT brief and the reenlistment and, you know, managing the advancement program and all that, everything else.
Yeah.
And, you know,
I was in the PTS era, bro.
Yeah.
I went from we transitioned from PTS to Seaway when I was a CCC, and I was a boot chief and a department chief and a fucking like, and yeah, dude, it was I was juggling flaming chainsaws. It was just like, I wanted to do more, but it was just like when I was getting 4 hours of sleep at night. Fucking when, you know, like, oh, but I mean, it sucks.
Even if we went as far as to sit there and have like a real resume class, and like, hey, I also understand there's going to be a lot of that audience, you know, that's just going to sit there and let it all flow by them, right? But part of it is the perception of like, okay, this is a check in the box thing, as opposed to this is a seriously resourced piece of, you know, getting people out. And like
the model that, good.
And like, you know, as much as I'm kind of like shitting on the Navies, like my little brother, when he got out of the Marine Corps, they didn't let him go to in-person TGPS at all. They had him click through a CBT-based TGPS that he basically did on one single afternoon.
Was it COVID-y time or whatever?
I mean, it was COVID-ish, but they had gone back to doing live convenes. It was just that his command, like, did not, you know, he was getting out. And so they were just like, no, screw you.
That's so fucked.
But, you know, sitting there and having this process, you know, it kind of really opened my eyes up. And, you know, and like literally it was going to they took us to Joseph A. Banks and we're like, hey, this is what a proper interview suit looks like. Because, you know, I'll tell you this.
Yeah.
About every dude in there, if you had asked him beforehand, said, you know, what color suit should I wear? He would say I should get a black suit, right? Because like everybody sits there and thinks black suits are, you know, oh, that's a universally good thing. Black suits are for funerals, man. Like in the real world, black suits are for funerals. That is really about it. Yeah. Like unless you're in a specific, you know,
and Lex Friedman, and that's the end of the list.
And you know, so like I ended up buying a couple of suits, and like that's. You know, I could make an argument that the Navy should sit there and if they really care about transition for dudes that are
last
getting out,
uniform allowance, should be fucking because they tell you with your when you make chief, they tell you can just swap the buttons on your dress blues and take all the shit off of it, and it's a Brooks Brothers suit, and you're like, no, it's not. Who would fucking wear this in public as like a like a professional suit?
Not
it's like
the 1940s, really obvious. Dude. Not since the 1940s.
Yeah, it'd be real obvious what I did, and it'd look ridiculous.
But
you'd be able to see the stitch marks and shit. Jesus. Like it'd be so stupid, dude.
But yeah, now I have a navy blue suit and a charcoal suit, and you know I've gotten comfortable sitting there and putting them on and wearing them, and you know it's all that kind of stuff. And here's the other thing, and this is a huge thing. It really broadened my eyes in terms of what was out there, right? So we tend to be pretty siloed in terms of what we think we should do when we get out of the Navy, right? Like if you're going to go to school, okay, want to go to school. If you want to stay in your profession, you know, for me, it's an easy lateral transfer. You know, I've done IT in one flavor or another for a lot of my last few years. I could very easily sit there and be one of those dudes that
with your clearance too. Amazon cloud service, whatever the fuck. Like I got a buddy that, I mean, with my security clearance, I was a cook chief. Like keep that. That's the context. That skill translates to $20 an hour or 30 grand a year as a sous chef, maybe. So it's like, I mean, it's probably a little more now with inflation and shit, but you get my point. My security clearance, my buddy Jason was trying to get me. So he's working for Booz Allen, and then he was transitioning to some Amazon defense contracting shit. And he was he's like, dude, you can do this online course, get certified to do this cloud service shit. I'll get you jobs starting at like $200 a year.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, huh? But then at the same time, it's like, I don't want to do that. That's not, I'm very much like, I need fulfillment. I need to feel the sense of purpose that we were talking about. And I'm not going to get that changing people's fucking passwords from home or whatever they do. I don't know.
Yeah. But, I mean, well, I think if you're doing it cleared, it'd be on-prem almost certainly. Right. But, but I mean, the other aspect of it is, you know, you're sitting there and you're dealing with, you know, like this mindset of like, oh, I'm going to get out and I'm going to do cleared IT. Right. Like that was literally exactly kind of what you're talking about doing. Yeah. Like that would have been kind of where my mindset was. Even though I don't necessarily love IT stuff that much, like I'm good at solving the problems and I understand how it works, but I was like, no, this is an easy, direct answer. And what I realized sitting there doing interviews and having folks talk to me, there's a bunch of different other jobs that I fill in on.
Mm-hmm.
My coach, partly because she does human resources, I think, she kind of pointed me and is like, hey, you have all these human resources blocks checked on your resume that you could really do. And like, that's one of those things, the soft skills that come along with, knowing how to onboard and offboard people, how to talk to people, talk through problem sets, how to counsel people. Like I know it's a weird thing to think about, right? But in the real world, your direct supervisor will almost never be the person that sits there and gives you your official counseling. Right.
Yeah.
It would be HR, because it needs to be within very specific bounds in terms of what can be said, and it needs to be recorded in a specific way and everything else along those lines. And that's a skill set that you have, that everybody in a leadership position in the Navy has, right? To a greater or lesser extent. Talent acquisition, for me, working both as a CCC and as a recruiter, that is a huge skill set. And then, one of the other things, and this is kind of a funny, the way she put it is kind of funny. I dealt with a lady who does, growth for a managed service provider, an IT service company. And so I kind of expected that she was going to be like doing an interview for me just to sit there and come and be yet another IT guy for her. And she sits, she tells me, tell me about a time that you sold somebody on something, or that you explained that you got something done, got buy-in. And I talked about how I had to pitch an infrastructure project and the way I went about it. And she goes, you don't need to be working as a help desk dude or as an IT guy.
You need to be in charge.
No. You need to be a sales engineer. You need to be a sales engineer, right? Which is a job I've never even heard of before. And like, I'm not.
Yeah, I don't even know what that is.
Basically, they're the technical expert in the room during a sale, right? So they explain the specific value of a technology, of a technical application. And translate, the phrase I like to use is translate the technical into the parsable. But, that is something that never would have occurred to me, because I didn't even know that was a job. Right? Like,
dude.
And
training.
Yeah.
Like the shipyard here has a bunch of training positions that I've considered it. It's not like, because I'd rather be teaching like leadership or doing this or whatever, but like, and then I'm going to school for psychology, and that's the current plan is 2 years of grad school, and then I'll get licensed and do the damn thing. But it, they have, like, I have a shitload of training, like, experience. I have all the things, like, you can convert your master training specialist into what they call a certified post-secondary instructor. So the civilian world realize, like, all you do is like pay a fee. You don't have to do anything. And then eventually you'll have to like re-up it with the company and do some continuing education stuff. But it's like the amount of training experience, and it's that very specific naval training stuff. It's like when you go into the DoD side of it, they'll pay you well to just train on anything. They're going to do a train the trainer thing with you. It's not like you have to be a subject matter expert on something too. They'll make you'll just do anything that they need trained on. And so like my old Cobb does it. My buddy Scott did it for a while for a different place, but there's positions like that all over the place too. So if you have a lot of like training, if you were an instructor and you got your MTS and you've done all that curriculum development shit and all that other stuff, it's like, that's a very valuable skill set. And same thing with me getting hired by that contractor. That was a huge part of it, was that I ran the A school. I was part of the curriculum reviews. I wrote the advancement exam. I sat the Chiefs board. I did like everything you can possibly do with training and advancement and education within the military. And it's like, that's a very valued skill. It is certainly in niche areas, but it exists, and they can only recruit from the population that has that experience. So that's another big one too, for sure. Man.
But just having that broadened perspective and like realizing how much wider the world was. Especially when it came to potential hiring stuff, like that was a huge thing. And so, I desperately wish that like everybody had access to a resource like this. And there's stuff like that out there for other organizations. Like, there's the Commit Foundation and other things that kind of fulfill similar roles. Right. But
I want to like appropriate. So my acquaintance friend, I call her a friend. Her name's Beata Bautista, I believe. I hope I didn't butcher her name. I'd have to go look at her Facebook. Her first name is, and I don't even know if I pronounce it right. It's Beata. It's like Beat A. So she's probably listening. I'm probably fucking it up. I'm sorry. But she came out with this concept, and I had her on the podcast like a long time ago, and it's called To Go Ashore. And it was like, she had a website and started doing a podcast, and it was a lot of it was right after she transitioned out of the military, and she was having her own struggles with mental health and all this other stuff. So it kind of like, I don't think it got to where she wanted it to, but the idea was so good that I was like, she was like, my experience transitioning out of the military was so fucking bad that I want to create a resource for people to not go through what I went through. And I was like, that's amazing. It's brilliant. And I wish like she would get behind it and do it as like a side hustle all the time. She still operates the social media accounts and stuff, but I don't know how much she's doing otherwise. Because I think she's just busy. She's a single mom, I think, and just working and going to school and all this shit. So but the idea, like, it's like I want to aggregate all these things into one place, and you can just go there and find out about the Honor Society. You could go there and find out about the other organizations. You could go find out, like, here's where you go find how resume resources for federal resumes, federal, and like, and it's all the free veteran benefit shit and all that stuff all in one place. And it's like, because right now it's like you have the va.gov, which is hard as fuck to navigate anyway, but then it's like, and some of the shit you won't even understand when you're trying to read on the website, or there's just not enough information, or not there'll be a page to the place, a resource that doesn't fucking explain anything. So you got to get on the phone and you got to do all this other shit. And it's just like, fuck, man, it's such a pain. But if somebody, like, I like the idea of trying to like put it all in one place, and that might be a follow-on tangent to this series, because I want to do this as a series, and this is the first one of like transition stuff. I got a guy on deck, a VSO that's a veteran. He's a guy, he was in 10 years, got out, became a VSO, and he's going to come on and talk about all the veteran, the VA claim stuff and all that kind of shit. So I'm excited to put all that. I'll put that together. I'll get the playlist, but I think I have to do more, man, because I just feel like it needs to happen. And maybe there's something out there I don't know about already, where somebody's already did that. So if
I haven't seen
anybody out there knows,
like it.
Me either.
You have like one-offs, like, the CEO of Honor Foundation did an interview with some Navy SEAL podcast, and know, different things along those lines, right? But what you don't have is you don't have a concentrated resource. I don't think anybody sat there, particularly in the realm of Navy podcasts, and talked about it beyond like, you need to make sure to take care of your sailors when they're getting out, because they're still people, right? Which, that is also applicable, but so in kind of on that spin, I want to sit there and like a little kind of gentle reminder to my fellow naval leaders who are dealing with a sailor, whether it's them or somebody else getting ready to retire. You need to make sure that you're helping them and taking care of them when it comes to the Navy piece still, right? So little things like, and a tour awards, right? And sitting there and helping manage different processes. And it doesn't need to be super interventional, checking in on every step of everything, right? But for me, I've long had kind of a personal thing that none of my sailors would leave the command without their end of tour award having presented to them in front of their peers if they wanted it presented. Right. That was a big deal to me, because if they wanted it presented, I was always sneaking into admin. Just give it to me. You don't got to tell anybody. And like, I don't want to. And that's okay. Like, I tried to do that for my last award that I got. And they read it out.
I did it for my retirement award, and I did it for my leaving the last boat award too. I was just like, it's fine. Just hand it to me. I don't need to do quarters on the pier, bro. Like, just we're good.
But I mean, with that, like, you have a ton of challenges on your plate as a naval leader. Trust me, bro. I hear you. Like, I hear you so clearly. Like, you have so much stuff you need to deal with, and your first class or your, chief that you relieve that's retiring, so he's still on deck, but he's not really there, or, whoever that you have, or if you're a CMC and you got chiefs working for you or whoever that are getting ready to retire, they still are owed that same level of leadership that you're providing your hot runner, dude that you think is going to be the next McPawn. They're owed every ounce of it. And I'm not saying this because I'm griping out about anything that's gone on with me. There have been things, but that's separate. It's more just that I'm seeing it. I'm seeing it. I'm seeing it with me, and I'm seeing it with other people. I agree. Where, the write-off, and like, I think for some folks it's reaping what they sowed, because I'm sure that a lot of dudes, they wrote off their sailor that was getting out of the Navy as soon as he made the decision, which is the wrong thing to do anyway. But the other part of it is just, I get it, hey, like from your perspective, hey, my hands are off the controls. I'm coming off the throttles. I should be able to handle this myself. I'm a big ass grown man. but you got to sit there and continue to provide that support. You got to sit there and continue to stay engaged, because here's the other real scary thing. So like we have a phrase in naval special warfare, and I think it's common elsewhere, which is the most dangerous part of any evolution is the transition, right?
Yeah.
So, and to put that into really simple and visceral terms, do you ever do transition drills when you were shooting?
Sort of. Like we did during our qual and requal drills and whatever. But it was very like slow, methodical, safe transitions. The RSO had shut everything down. Well, now you're gonna kneel. Now you're gonna or it'll be a sequence where you're on the range and it's like, do this, reload, switch hands, shit like that. But it wasn't like running and gunning and like doing anything super complicated.
And
it was all pretty static.
I wouldn't expect that. But like when I'm talking about, positions is one thing, but it's also typically when we talk about a transition when shooting in NSW and elsewhere, you're talking
about transitioning weapons,
transitioning from rifle to pistol, right?
Okay, no, not really. No.
So because everybody in NSW largely is carrying a rifle and a pistol, right? Which is not the norm elsewhere, which I didn't know until a few years ago. But your rifle's down and you need to change over to your pistol. Okay, so there's two things that are there's like three moving parts to that, right? So there's the fact that you're not going to be shooting, and so you need your buddy to be shooting for you. There's the fact that you're going to be handling a gun that potentially has a stuck live round in it that could sit there and go off, and you're not going to have your hand on it.
Right. Like,
so you need to sit there and try to clear the malfunction and try to get it safe if you can. And then you have the action of sitting there and drawing and pressing out your pistol, right? Where you're going to have your, your adrenaline's high, you're rushing, you're pushing. Very easy to shoot yourself in a number of different ways, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So not to sit there and pound a metaphor, but transitioning out is no different. Because it's not just the simple, technical act of like the stuff that you have to do or moving on to your next step and figuring out where your next target's going to be. It's also, there's a huge risk that, I think actually one of the biggest suicide risks we have for sailors is during their separation and retirement period. And that's a weird thing to think about, right? Because, but that loss of sense of purpose is huge. And then,
and you're not ready. What I wasn't ready for was the loss of the community. Yeah. It's like the sense of purpose for me, because my best friend was best man at my wedding. And he asked me, because he knew I was getting close to retirement. And he was just like, so I know you well enough to know that you need that sense of purpose and fulfillment, and you get it from being a chief. So like, what are you going to get it from when you're retired? Like that's what you need. And I know that. So like, what's your plan to address that? And in my mind, I told him, I'm like, I get it from the podcast, man. I'm lucky in that way where I kind of already found a way. So it's like, even if I got a normal job, even if I'm managing a Home Depot or something, it's like, I still have this to come to and get that same type of fulfillment to like scratch that itch. And it's true. It's not the same thing, but it is. I do get like a muted version of it. I definitely get a lot of fulfillment from doing this, but I wasn't ready for even the fucking people that you don't like at work form part of that network of community and that sense of belonging to that community. And while I always prided myself on my identity not being a chief or whatever, a submariner, like it's not who I am, it's what I do. And it's played a enormous role in my development and the development of that identity and the evolution of it and whatever. But it's not like, I didn't think it would be a problem not being a chief anymore. And I don't think it has been but I wasn't prepared for losing everything else, man. And even the community of like the entirety of my social interaction was like work stuff. And so like when I retired and all of a sudden that was just gone, it was like I was on a like windy corner by myself. And I was like, oh fuck, and I didn't know what to do about that. I didn't do a good job of managing it. And then it compounded with all the other stuff I talked about earlier where I went off my meds and all the other bullshit. But it's like, there's a sense of belonging. Like I'm a big Maslow's hierarchy of needs guy, and that's a huge part of it. And I didn't recognize the risk. It was just a blind spot. I didn't recognize, because a lot of the people I worked with, they weren't people I wanted to spend time with outside of work. Like, that wasn't, I mean, there were a handful for sure, but not many. And so I didn't think I was going to be missing anything. And like you were saying too, about like having the anxiety of not doing it anymore. Like for me, my transition process was different in that I couldn't wait to get the fuck out of there. I was like, I described to my dad, I turned my badges in and shit. So like I walked out the door for the last time. I was walking to my car laughing, bro, like smiling. My face hurt and I could not stop, like just like ear to ear grin on my face. I was fucking vibrating walking back to my car. I was so like, it was just this huge release and just like elated.
Yeah, of course.
And that was, I thought I was going to be skipping through the rest of I'm a civilian now, like skipping through the rest of my life. I went home and smoked weed that afternoon. Like I was just like, woo, I'm free. And then reality kind of set in. And that's when it started to be like, oh God, there's all this other shit that's happening that I wasn't prepared for at all. And so like the removal of that sense of belonging in the community was a huge, and I would argue even still is a problem, not nearly as big. I've found ways to mitigate it and deal with it. And I think I've just gotten used to it a little bit. But yeah, man, that like, it's no fucking joke. Like that like a lot of people have an identity crisis for sure. And I would caution everyone to try to maintain a version of yourself outside of work that makes it comfortable that like, this is just a thing that I do, not who I am. Because otherwise I mean, you're setting yourself up to fail in a way that, like you're saying, it's like almost irrecoverable. But then you're not safe just because you manage that part, because then there's all this unknown and fucking, and then the stress of the civilian transition. Like it's like you're living in a whole new world, man. It's health insurance. Fuck. Like it's so weird. I hate it. Like it's stupid.
I hear it, man.
I'm like the first time I had to run my debit card at the dentist, I was like, what the fuck is this?
Oh yeah.
Like this is some bullshit. And it's nuts, man. So what is it, like the rough sketch of the what's next plan for you, if there is one? Like, where do you think either vaguely or specifically, depending on where you're at?
Like, like a good naval special warfare sailor, I've got a bunch of different COAs that I'm working through right now. So kind of COA 1, the main intended COA. My partner's getting up here, so I got to move over to the other side of the water, right? Because she's going to be up on a boat in the yards, and commuting from where I live, which is nice and convenient for me to go and work on Little Creek, is not going to be convenient at all for her over on that side of the water. So I'm kind of looking more for positions up on that side, right? I can't quite do the easy flip to go be a contractor working in my same organization I'm working for right now. That's open to me, and that's a potential COA, but that's kind of it's a tail end option.
Do they have any remote shit or anything?
It's kind of hard because
or hybrid.
The most skilled stuff that I can, the most important stuff I can do is on classified networks, and classified networks are not, with certain exceptions, not things that you don't get to, you don't really get to take them home, generally speaking. Right. But so, with that, like, I'm looking at a bunch of different jobs and options up there on that side of the water. I'm looking at remote stuff with a couple of different in and out of defense organizations. I've done a bunch of interviews, like, with interviews and networking. Cool. I'm kind of narrowing my scope right now. I'm learning some of the different positions that I didn't really think about. So like the sales engineering thing, that's a whole new set of conversations I need to have. But, a lot of dudes, I don't have my degree, and there's a lot of closed doors as a result of that. So, one of the CCOs I'm looking at is William and Mary is right up the road from us, which is it's a baby Ivy. Yeah. I talked with the guy that does veteran admissions there, and I'm actually in person with him this coming Friday. And I'm going to go and do an interview, and I may be going back to school. and the big
chapter 31 first, bro.
The
maximize those benefits.
The big debate for me on that one is basically, so your clearance now is only good for 2 years after you get out, right? So that's a big change with their continuous evaluation. It used to be if you had your clearance renewed
5 years or something,
it was like 5 or 6 years from whenever you renewed, right? Now it's 2 years from your last day that you needed access. That's how long your clearance remains good for. And so, if I want to leverage that clearance for a position, I need to sit there and pretty much immediately hire into something in defense, right? Even if it's just something that maintains the secret versus TSSCI,
I pretty much just wrote that off because I'm just like, man, I don't want to like there's shit that I had, and you probably had to do some of this shit too, but like going on Carter, I had to do a counterterrorism polygraph, NCIS. I'm like, I don't ever want to fucking go through that experience again. And it's not because I'm a terrorist or I have anything to hide. It's just like
stuff like polys and everything like that, and
the responsibility,
and just the level of there's the background knowledge that there's somebody who is kind of looking over your shoulder at whatever you're doing, right? And so.
Right. And just the managing what I can and cannot say. Like I have to do it on the podcast still. And the further I get away from it, the less I remember about what I can say and what I can't say. Like, it's like, fuck, is this classified?
Yeah.
Like, I gotta and my wife will ask me shit. We'll be watching the news and she'll start asking me questions. And I'm like, I can't talk about that. Like, I know some shit, but I can't talk. And it's like, a lot of times I have to play it safer and safer because I don't even remember what I can. You know what I mean? I don't even remember all of how there's you can say greater than so many feet and greater than so many knots when you're talking about capabilities of submarines. I'm like, I don't even fucking remember. Like, I think I don't even remember what it is. So like, I almost hesitate to even try to explain it anymore. Cause I'm like, I can't remember. I've just data dumped so much shit that like, I'm like, dude, I don't remember where the line is anymore.
Yeah. And I mean,
but it's like a good and a bad thing.
The real fun is when
I don't want the responsibility.
Oh yeah. The real fun is when you're dealing with two people that both have clearances, but what you're cleared on is completely different. So just having these conversations, having those conversations with each other where you're like,
that was a constant thing on Carter because everybody was read into different shit. And there's like a ton of within you get TSSCI as like a base plate and then they build all this other shit on top of it. And so it's like, and everybody's was different. So you had to look at the badges and we have the same and whatever and make sure I could and there's also the catch all of you're on a submarine. I'm going to see and hear shit I'm not read into occasionally. So there's the whole other
the culture,
all that bullshit, but
so those are kind of the A and B codes, and then there's also the C code. So it's going to be interesting because a whole lot of change happened at the same time, and if things don't necessarily work out with my partner and I, then it'll be a whole new life. In terms, I'll be getting out of Virginia, probably going either to Colorado or Texas. Maybe Washington if I can find something up that way, because I've always loved the Pacific Northwest.
Let me know, dude. Fuck, that'd be sick. Be my second in real life friend from the podcast because Chief Bob's out here now. Chief Bob's it's like a 30-minute drive. He's on I'm about as far away as people will ever live to commute to the Bangor submarine base, and he's in a city on the other side of the base. It's like 35, 40 minutes. It's not too bad, but he's local now. I was just at his house the other day.
My second favorite brewery in the world is in Poulsbo. So,
fuck yeah, bud. Let's go.
But
Poulsbo's a nice area too. I know. It's a good area to live. That's where Bob's at.
And we'll see what happens.
Hell yeah.
I mean, that's up in the air. Obviously my preferred co would not be that happening. I'd prefer to stay here with my partner. But unfortunately,
right, obviously. Yeah.
Realities are what they are, and we've lived apart for a real long time.
I'm not trying to influence your decision at all, but I'm just saying, if you end up in Washington, holler at your boy.
So that's kind of the CCOA, and then
what would school be? Sorry, I didn't mean
it's okay.
What were you thinking about going to school for?
Data science.
So statistics and stuff?
Kinda. So data science is about managing large data sets and being able to interact with them well. So
in the IT world,
it ties in with IT. It also ties in with AI and machine learning, right? So give you an example: ChatGPT, right?
Yeah, large language
model, and it's had to consume all of Reddit and all of these different other things, and the New York Times archive and all that stuff that it's eaten. Well, that's an unwieldy and large amount of data. And so having that be managed efficiently and organized in a way that you're not just burning tons of compute, just sitting there and searching through the data banks. And also being able to understand how to use that for modeling, right? So being able to sit there and build out networks like, you know, I mean, to take it back to what I do for a living, like data scientists are very heavily involved in the way we target bad guys, right? Because, you know, there's the raw intelligence of just sitting there and getting information about them by various means.
Yeah.
But, you know, part of what you're looking at nowadays is you want to find patterns, right? Because some of our bad guys, they are smart enough that they're not going to have an internet presence that associates back to their organization. And they're not going to carry a cell phone. Or if they do carry a cell phone, they'll change the SIM card on a regular basis. And so having access to large data sets of information relevant to that and being able to process it and use to find a pattern
and find,
you know, to find a fix enables the finish. Right. So
that's interesting, man. You're a better man than me because I've taken intro to statistics and then I'm in the midst of my last like research class and I just want to like put my head through the wall, dude. I hate it. Look, but like, I get it. It's cool. The end product's cool for me, but the getting there part is just
if I could just like pick whatever I wanted on the basis of this is what I want, I would probably be doing something in ag, right? Like rangeland science,
something
agriculture.
With what? Okay.
You know, so something like rangeland science or forestry and go and work and be one of the dudes that helps manage like some of these large environmental spaces, whether it be like national forest or prairie land.
We got Shenandoah right there. Why can't you? Is there nothing with like wildlife?
So there's not really
forestry and whatever.
So school wise, there's not a ton here that offers like a good program.
Well, I mean, I just mean employment, like federally or with the state.
No, I mean, that's definitely an option.
Whatever.
That's definitely an option. But we're talking specifically about the school piece, you know, like.
Okay, gotcha.
I mean,
all right.
You know, so far as like being a ranger or whatever else, like, you know, hey, one of the great gifts of retirement is you have that backstop pay, and you know, unfortunately / fortunately for me, I'm likely to have a pretty substantial.
You'll be 100%. VA
disability
rated, I'm sure. Like,
you know, pretty substantial level of disability, and you know that's its own separate check. And so I have a lot of flexibility. I can kind of pick what I want to do based on what I want. And so you know, the data science piece, like those kind of those large data sets and everything like that, that's fascinating to me. You know, So
that sounds cool.
Those are the kind of, you know, the 4 breaks right now. And you know, we'll see what the next adventure brings, but like I'm excited, and I think that's the biggest thing that I hope that you know, other folks that are kind of in the same seat that I'm in take away, which is that it's scary. Don't get me wrong, it is scary. It's complex. It's hard, but it's exciting, and there's so much more adventure and fun out there, right? And like being able to have the ability to make your choices with a few less constraints, and make the choices based on what's good for you and your family, and think a little bit less about what's good for the organization and the team. Starting to think in terms of and having the we be 2 people versus 250 people or 250,000 people. Trust me, it's freeing, y'all.
Yeah, for me, it's getting excited. It's like I feel like my anxiety and mental health being what it was at the time, all I was doing was worrying and trying to panic fill the things that were missing. You know what I mean? And so now it's like now that I've gotten to a place with like, and I'm not there, like I haven't arrived anywhere. I'm just in a much better position with my physical and mental health, even though physically I'm kind of a shit show right now, but I'm working on it and figuring it out and whatever. But like, I just feel like I'm starting, like some systems are coming back online or something, to the point where it's like I'm even able to like get excited about this kind of shit. And like, and I'm all, the bachelor's degree is done this summer, and then I'm applying to grad school, so it's like it's almost like I can see the result coming too, and I'm like, oh fuck, I am really going to get employed off of this, and I am really going to get to do some of the things I want to do. Like I think a nonprofit would be really cool. To help veterans. I think working at the VA will probably happen to get some experience with not just with veterans, but doing the job, and then maybe hang my own shingle, maybe fucking works. I don't know. I don't know. I could end up doing anything, but I'm starting to, instead of being scared of that unknown, I'm starting to get like excited about it because it's all just opportunity, you know, and I'm like, yeah, man. And it's weird because that used to just scare the shit out of me. I hated the fucking unknown, dude. My whole career and largely life, I was just, fear of the unknown was the fucking worst.
Embrace. Yeah. Wow. I'm about to quote, get real, get better, get better. But, embrace the red.
I'm clipping this shit. Go ahead.
Embrace the red. Right. So
embrace the red.
So that's the thing from Get Real, Get Better. And it's like, look at the places you suck, or the places that you have things missing, or the places where there's stuff that's unknown. So, you know, being in a position and a mindset that you can look at that and you can have that honest assessment, but also sit there and look out at your future and see the possibility and see the things that are coming from there. Like, embrace that. Right. Yeah. And, you know, having,
I was going to mention that earlier when you did the beginning lines from the stories and like talking about the first step of the Honor Society stuff is like, that's where the work gets done, man. Like, that's where the progress happens. That's where the problems get fixed. And it fucking sucks. Like, cause you have to go there to do it. You have to go be in that place where it's shitty and scary and painful.
100%. I have a feeling that there's an aspect of like, the Honor Foundation kind of looked at this and like, every single dude, like every single guy and gal that comes in here probably needs to go to therapy, but we can't sit there and manage 100%. That. So
we can't.
So we're going to give them like a few tools in the toolbox and hope that they learn from it. All right, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you got me for Get Real, Get Better. You got some transitions, good stuff out of me. I can't wait to talk to you again, but I think it's about that time.
Dude, this was awesome.
All right.
Yeah, this was awesome, man. It's a good time to wrap it up, and I really, really fucking appreciate you coming on and talking about this shit.
Absolutely.
With me and being willing to share, because like it's fucking terrifying and it's scary and it's hard, but it's also an important conversation that I think people can learn a lot from. So, dude, I love you, no shit, and really, really fucking appreciate it.
All right, I love you too.
Thanks, man. All right, I hope y'all enjoyed that. I mean, we clearly had a good time. Dan's just he's a great dude. He's so fun to talk to, and he's so intelligent. I think we're very similar in a lot of ways. So it's always just a very fun time to catch it. I mean, I haven't talked to him like that in a while. Like we message all the time, but it was very cool to be able to spend some time. And then I think we got through a lot of really great stuff. And I think we pretty much hit it all too. I would have sat there and talked to him all day long. And he's like, dude, I gotta go. But yeah, and I'm very much looking forward to this series continuing. If you got inputs, let me know. If there's things that you experienced on your way out of the military that were frustrating, or you had questions about and you didn't understand why they didn't have resources for that, or address it during TAPS or whatever, let me know. I'm willing to grow this. Like, this can be like a living document, even though it's not. It's a podcast series, but you know what I mean. Like, I'm willing to add to it, just like with Initiation Chronicles. Like if something comes up that's relevant and that we haven't touched yet, then we'll do that, and I'll just add it to the playlist, add it to the link on the website or whatever. So yeah, hit me up. Let me know what you guys think. Let me know what you think of the idea. Let me know what you think of the episode. Hit us up. Don't give up the shit podcast @gmail.com. You can Facebook message us. Don't give up the shit podcast. Or you can DM us on Instagram, Reddit, or Discord @DGUTSPodcast. If you want to support us, you can go to dgutspodcast.com. In the upper right hand corner of the website, there's a donate button, or you can go to Don't Give Up the Ship Apparel. It's dgutspodcast.com. Get yourself some Naval Pride and Heritage gear you'll actually wear in public, or just hit the shop button on dgutspodcast.com. Takes you right there. Or you can go to patreon.com/dgutspodcast. Pick one of the 5 tiers. Become a member today. That's probably the best one. The cheapest tier is $5 a month. Like, it's super chill. If you want to support us, you'll barely notice it, and it's a really great way to support us. It helps us pay the bills and expand the platform. We're almost breaking even. Like, I would say, like, I did my taxes the other day. That's the only reason I'm thinking about it. And yeah, we're almost breaking even. Like, I basically lost the amount of money I loaned to myself last year, so it's like we're real close to breaking even. But yeah, it's like I mean, the more we can get, no matter how little, it all helps and gets us towards the goal of this becoming like a sustainable business model. But Whatever you do, we appreciate you. You can like, share, subscribe, review on all the platforms for all the things. If you don't want to spend any money, rate us, subscribe us on YouTube, just all the things. You know what to do. and then we appreciate all of it, including just listening and watching on YouTube if I ever get around to video editing. And that's it. That's what I got for you today. Thank you so much for listening, and don't give up the ship. Hey, shout out to all our level 5 patrons, Victoria Livingood, William McIver, and Mark Galagos. To all our other patrons, we really appreciate your support. Helps to pay all the bills, expand the platform, and we couldn't do it without you. Thank you so much. Please hit the like button, drop a comment down below on what you thought, and subscribe to the channel.